Today we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. This, as you would probably guess, is the linchpin verse that Roman Catholics claim to prove that Peter is the Pope, the very first Pope, that Jesus blesses and gives authority over the entire church. So what I'd like to do is give you really two reasons why this is not true. First, the contextual reason from the Bible itself, and secondly, historical arguments for why it is not so. First, the context. This is probably the most important reason. So here it is, Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. Let's start in verse 13. It says this: Now when Peter came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he was asking his disciples, saying, Who do people say that the Son of Man is? And they said, Well, some say John the Baptist, and others Elijah, but still others, Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He said to them, But who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter answered and said, You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered and said to him, Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonas, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I also say to you that you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades or hell will not overpower it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth, and whatever have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall have been loosed in heaven. Then he warned the disciples that they should tell no one that he was the Christ. So here's the passage, speaking of Jesus, the one who is asking the disciples, Who do you think I am? Or who do others say that I am? And they were trying to figure out who. They say these are what the people are saying. Some say John the Baptist, some say Jeremiah, some say one of the prophets. They're trying to survey the crowd. But Jesus said, I'm not interested in the crowd. I want to know, who do you say that I am? And of course, Peter, always the first to open his mouth and really maybe regret it because he speaks so quickly, as we'll see shortly here. He's the one who stands up and speaks. And so what does he say? You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus says, Blessed are you. You didn't come to this on your own. The Father opened your eyes to see this. So he gives him this blessing by saying, Blessed are you, Simon. Blessed are you, he says, Simon Bar-Jonah, giving him his name. You are Simon. And this phrase, blessed, is really not reserved for Peter being the Pope or the first alleged Pope, but really a common statement that Jesus would give as God opens the eyes of those that have been held captive or made blind. And so what Jesus is doing is he's showing that sight is something that is given by God. Ability to understand and comprehend is something that is given by God, and it's a blessing. You see this also earlier in Matthew chapter 13, when Jesus is fulfilling the prophecy of Isaiah 6, when he says, You're going to go to a people, they will have ears, but they cannot hear, they will have eyes, but they cannot see. That was prophesied in Isaiah chapter 6, and it's fulfilled in Matthew chapter 13, when Jesus begins his ministry speaking in parables. Why does Jesus begin his parables? Because his parables aren't really meant to clarify, they're meant to obscure. Why obscure? Because this is part of the judgment that God has given over to the Jews for rejecting their Messiah. Why do you speak in parables? They're asking, why do you speak to them in parables? Here's what Jesus says in Matthew 13, verse 13. I speak to them in parables because while seeing they do not see, and while hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. And in them the prophecy of Isaiah is being fulfilled, which says, here it is, he's quoting Isaiah, You will keep on hearing, but will not understand. You will keep on seeing, but will not perceive. For the heart of this people has become dull, and with their ears they scarcely hear, and they have closed their eyes, lest they would see with their eyes, hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and I would heal them. But then he says, But blessed are you. Blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. For truly I say to you that many prophets and righteous men desired to see what you see and did not see it, and to hear what you hear and did not hear it. So Jesus is giving a blessing not because of a particular office. He's giving a blessing by saying, this is divine. For you to come to an understanding of the truth, for you to come to an understanding of the parables, which is the truth, for you to come to understanding of who I truly am, that is a blessing. So you take that idea of Jesus declaring blessing, what he's declaring a blessing about is not the person, but your confession of the truth, your understanding of the truth, your comprehension of the truth. And so when he says in Matthew chapter 16, and I also say that you are Peter, and upon this rock, he's not saying the rock is Peter. He's saying the rock is this confession that now I can say to you, you are blessed because of you, what you've come to realize, because how I've opened your eyes, how I've allowed for you to see, allowed for your ears to now hear. This confession is this rock that then Jesus says, I will build my church. Think of it. How are people built up in the church? It's not because of Peter. It's because one by one, each person, their eyes open, their ears can hear. What do they hear? The truth that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and that by believing they may have life in his name. That's the point of the Gospel of John, John chapter 20. These things have been written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and by believing you may have life in his name. That is the telos, the main idea of the gospel. And so how are people added to this kingdom? How is the church built up? One confession at a time that Jesus is the Christ. And so this is really not directed to Peter alone, but to every single individual. And then he says, I will give to you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall have been loosed in heaven. So he's saying that based upon this confession, this is the key that has been given. Those who confess, those who receive this message of the gospel are those that are in the kingdom. And you, disciples, you 12, can determine this is the key of how you know someone is in the kingdom. Do they confess that Jesus is the Christ? How do you know they're to be released? Because they reject Jesus as the Christ. They reject the truth of who Jesus is. That's the key to either loose or bind. Not an official key to determine, okay, I, Peter, and now I'm able to let you in or let you out. It's not given to an individual. Rather, the confession is what's given that will establish the church. So number one reason is the context of the passage, the whole Gospel of Matthew, the whole of the gospel proclamation proper is what determines who's in the kingdom, who's not in the kingdom. So context, that's number one. Number two, historical reasons. Rome claims that the majority of the church fathers all interpreted the text that refers to Peter as the rock. They all say that all the church fathers interpreted this passage as referring to Peter as the rock, and therefore Peter is the Pope. Well, that's not so. Roman Catholic historian Johann Joseph Ignaz von Dollinger, who has taught church history for 47 years, this is what he said. He's a Roman Catholic historian. And he admits this. Let me read you a quote from him. Quote, of all the fathers who interpret these passages in the Gospel of Matthew 16:18, John 21:17, not a single one applies them to the Roman bishops as Peter's successors. How many fathers have busied themselves with these texts, yet not one of them whose commentaries we possess, Origen, Chrysostom, Hilary, Augustine, Cyril, Theodore, and those whose interpretations are collected in the Catinas, has dropped the faintest hint that the primacy of Rome is the consequence of the commission and promise to Peter. He's saying none of them, none of the fathers. And this is worth pointing out because Rome maintains that the reformers in the 16th century reinterpreted Matthew 16:18 to not mean that it's referring to Peter, but to this confession, as if to remove the power that was given to Peter by Jesus. That is not something that happened only in the 16th century. None of the fathers, none of the church fathers, Origen, Chrysostom, Hilary, Augustine, Cyril, Theodore, none of them viewed it this way, even Augustine. So actually what Augustine said on Matthew 16:18. Therefore, Peter is so called from the rock, not the rock from Peter, as Christ is not called Christ from the Christian, but the Christian from Christ. Therefore he saith, thou art Peter, and upon this rock which thou hast confessed, upon this rock which thou hast acknowledged, saying, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God, I will build my church. I will build upon thee, not myself upon thee. So Augustine is saying that the rock is really this confession. The rock is really the acknowledgement that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, not Peter. It's the confession that is the rock, not Peter. Though there is a wordplay on Peter, Petros, which means little stone. He's describing Peter as a little stone, but the foundation is not Peter. The foundation is the confession. The very first time, actually, that Peter is described as the first pope wasn't even by any of the fathers. It was by another bishop of Rome, Leo the First, in the 5th century, well after Augustine, well after the fathers. He's the one who first claimed that Peter is the first bishop of Rome, and that he would be the first of many successors after him that would establish this unbroken papacy. So, biblically speaking, you can't get Peter to become the pope from Matthew 16:18. Historically, from the fathers, none of them claim that Peter is the first pope. Not until the 5th century, we have another pope actually saying that. So there you have it. But again, if you're a Roman Catholic and you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, yeah, I don't want to hear that. I'm going to stick to being a Roman Catholic. That's not going to change my mind. And I would agree with you. None of this will change any mind of a Roman Catholic. I could show you all the verses, and that's not going to change any Roman Catholic's mind. What is it that's going to change a Roman Catholic's mind that would help them to see who Jesus really is? It's not biblical arguments. It's not historical arguments. It's this. It's the gospel. Every Roman Catholic needs to hear the gospel, which is the good news, the announcement that Jesus has come and can forgive you of all your sins, not in the future, not based on what you're going to do, but right now. He can forgive you right now. And what you do is you place your trust and your faith in Jesus Christ alone as the one that can save you. Not your works, not your accomplishments, not your human merit, not your good works, but by your faith, your confession of faith that Jesus is indeed the Christ, the Son of the living God, and as such, he is the only one that can forgive you of all your sins. By placing your faith in him, by placing your faith on that confession that Jesus alone can save you from all your sins, not just your sins that you're committing now, all your sins that you committed in the past and all your sins that you committed in the future. By placing your faith in him who can forgive you of all your sins as far as the east is from the west, that your sins are forgiven, you can be saved. And what that means is that you'll see for the first time, your ears will be able to hear, your eyes will be able to see truly who Jesus Christ is, the Son of God, who loves you and gave himself up for you, and who died on the cross for you to forgive you, not just of some of your sins, but for all, who died for all of your sins. And if you place your faith and cry out to him right now, you can be saved.